Good afternoon. Welcome back to this Sunday workshop on finding equanimity in the face of change. So we've been looking at how to bring forth a response from equanimity in the face of changes. And the morning session, just to recap a little bit, equanimity is defined as the state of mind that is free from attachment and aversion. So attachment and aversion are two categories of habituated reactions that we have towards changes in our life, towards different changes in objects and experiences and people and situation and so forth. So we look at how to invite our attention to come back to the present moment, to be in touch with the reality of this moment, which is a good way of working with our habituated reactions when they are triggered. When they are triggered, our attention tends to be hijacked and caught up in a whole series of reactive thoughts and emotions, which constitute our reactivity. So we are sucked into it, and we find that in those states, our attention, our perception are all affected or even distorted by our reactivity. So it's very helpful to invite our attention to come back to this moment, come back to here and now, come back to the reality that we sense in this moment, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, to be in touch with the reality has a grounding effect on the mind. And also we talk about working on releasing that reactivity, releasing ourselves, our body and mind from the grip of our habituated reactions. Yeah. And to strengthen or bring forth equanimity, we require ourselves to shift our perspective away from one of attachment, which is holding on to what we perceive as good or beneficial, and we are resisting change. We are resisting change by trying to hold on to it, by hanging on to it. Or alternatively, towards those experiences, objects that we perceive as not helpful or harmful or hurtful or bad, we reject them. We try to push them away. We try to get rid of them, which is our aversion, anger, hatred, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So equanimity is trying to take our mind, our attention out of this polarity of reactions and to place it in this present moment. And we reinforce it by reflecting on karma, on the fact that each one of us are the owner of our own actions. We are responsible for our actions, and by acting, through our actions, we create our future, which create bring about different consequences of our actions. So we meditate on reminding ourselves that I am the owner of my actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, and not merely on my wishes for others, for myself. Yep. So by reminding ourselves the power of our actions, our choices, which includes actions through the mind, our thoughts that we dwell on, our speech, our communications, and our physical behavior, we are sort of empowering ourselves. We're taking back the power, from our own side, to develop a sensitivity to the causes and conditions and work at changing those conditions to create the right combination of conditions so that we can bring forth the desired outcomes, not as a way of resisting the change in life, but as a way of going along with it and relating to it and working with all the different changes in the situations and so on and so forth. And by empowering ourselves to act, to make the right choices, to through that, to bring together the right conditions for us to experience happiness. So it's a very empowering kind of meditation, not exactly not passive at all, and we're not just sitting there doing nothing. In fact, it's a very active process of taking our attention out of our reactive and quite often a conditioned way of thinking and seeing and reacting to things, and to look at things freshly, anew, and to be creative in how we can deal with it. So in this afternoon session, to carry on with that, we can also do equanimity meditation in relation to others. And because other people are a major source of disturbance, major source that trigger our habituated reaction of attachment or aversion. So if we don't address that, we don't look carefully at how we relate to others, how we view others relative to our own happiness or unhappiness, we are more likely than not to be triggered again and again. In fact, a lot of human relationship, unfortunately, is built on this kind of mutually reinforcing and mutually triggering one another's habituated, patterned reactions. So it's like, often I describe it as we all have a script in how we relate to, and actual fact, the important people in our life, and we just sort of follow the script. You say this line, I say this, you say this, I say that, and the script is repeated again and again, sometimes throughout one's whole lifetime. You never step out of the script. You're just continuously playing the same parts with one another. It does get a bit boring and unhappy, if we keep it up. So equanimity is, of course, to not give in to this kind of fixated reactions. Instead to come back to a state of balance, a buffered state in which we are less easily triggered this way, and we can re-examine our habituated reactions. We can step out of them and not be fixated by them. The thing about with others is we have built up very fixed ideas about other people. We have images and ideas based on memories, past interactions, based on our deep-seated beliefs or opinions. So we form all these different ideas about other people, and we project those ideas onto them. So much so that we are no longer seeing other people or relating to them as who they are, but we are reacting from a place, from a certain image in our mind. Of course, the image doesn't change. The image is not the living person. The image is just our idea that we are fixated on. And so we find ourselves in relation to that fixated image that we project onto others. We also have a very fixated kind of pattern of behavior and the way we react, be it attachment or the opposite, aversion, right? And rooted in, of course, in ignorance, closed-mindedness, narrow-mindedness. Ignorance is a state of grasping onto those ideas and image we project and holding them as real, holding them as true, when in actual fact they are not. In actual fact, they are deviated from reality. So we can apply the same equanimity meditation to others, which is an interesting exercise in itself, to say we are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions and not merely on my wishes for you. It's an interesting thing. You can see what it triggered. Saying it in relation to another person, it helps us to see clearly, which is my responsibility, what my choices, my actions, and which is their responsibility, their choices, their actions or their reactions. And to be able to see that clearly. I mean, of course, to some extent, we can influence one another's behavior. We can, through our communication, through our physical act, we can bring about changes in others as well. But that changes are limited because it also depends on the other person, how the other person responds to what you're trying to do, what you say, what you act, how you act. Sometimes we have I think a lot of our reactions come from struggling to control another behavior, something which is really uncontrollable. Yeah. We can't even control how we react. Something happened and a reaction is triggered, and out we come. It doesn't even stop to ask us for permission. We just react. So likewise, the same for another person. So here we are trying our best to somehow, verbally or physically or by other means, trying to rein other people in, trying to get them to behave in a certain way. It's almost a project doomed to fail. Yeah. And if you don't see clearly, we will repeatedly enter into this pattern of struggling to control them, struggling to get them to live the way we want them to live, do the things we want them to do, don't do the things we don't want them to do, and find that it's all futile. That is when we cannot see clearly that each one of us is responsible for our own choices, for our own actions, and that to step beyond the line is to step beyond what we can reasonably expect ourselves to control. And so we are setting ourselves up to suffer. So this meditation invites us to come back and reassess the situation, our relationship with others, and try to see whether we can see things more in accord with reality, to see the person as much as possible as who they are, instead of what we project onto them, whether as a very pleasant image to which we are attached, or an unpleasant image to which we have aversion or anger or hatred. And if we can put aside the image and we just see this person with his or her own struggles, his own sets of habituated reactions as a fellow human being, and to be able to recognize and see that each one of us make our own choices, act in a certain way, and we also experience the corresponding consequences or results. Yeah. So this is another major area we can work on. This one meditation will not do justice to it, but I think it's a good way to start. To start thinking about this and working on the equanimity in relation to others. And we do it using this verse as a support. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. So the wishes for you can be, doesn't depend on my good wishes for you, doesn't also depend on my bad wishes for you. Even if I hold very negative thoughts towards you and I have really terrible wishes upon you, it doesn't have as much impact. In fact, our wishes impact us more than impact the others, because after all, it's born within our own mind and consciousness. Yeah. So let's do a meditation and look at cultivating equanimity in relation to other people, especially the significant people in our life, as well as how to relate to their behavior and their actions. Yeah. So I invite you to find a comfortable meditation posture. Since this is right after lunch in the afternoon, it's very likely that we will feel sleepy, drowsy. So see if we can embrace this change in our mental state, mind state, and just acknowledge that these are the coming together of conditions that promote drowsiness and sleepiness, especially at this time of the day, where energy level dip, especially after lunch. So instead of struggling against it, I recommend just acknowledge it, acknowledge what you find. Quite often, even if we struggle, it will not go away. It's just the natural coming together of the conditions. So see if we can relate to it with equanimity, not get upset, not get frustrated, not tense up. And sometimes in this context, it's perfectly fine to doze off. Don't think that this will repeat itself forever and ever, but it's just a very condition of this moment. And we can doze off, we can wake up, and when we wake up, we can always come back to the meditation and start from there. Right? So let's start with settling our body into a suitable meditation posture. We take a few moments at the beginning of the meditation to adjust the body, to make sure that the body is comfortable in our meditation posture. Take care that the full length of the spine is at ease, that our posture has not introduced unnecessary pain or discomfort. Rest our arms and hands on some physical support so that we can allow our shoulder muscles to be relaxed. Feel free to close the eyes completely or leave them open, whichever works best for you. Become aware of the sensations coming through, the points of contact between body and seat, body and ground. Allow our body to sense that in this posture it is well supported, well balanced and safe. And this creates the conditions to facilitate a natural process of unwinding, of loosening up, of letting go of different areas of tensions and tightness and contractions in the body. And then to help body and mind to settle into meditation, might be helpful to start with the breath as a support. So we can rest our attention on the natural sensations of the breath, allowing ourselves to fully experience the in-breath and the out-breath. And especially as we breathe out, take this as an opportunity to deepen a sense of release, encouraging the body to release and to let go of unnecessary contractions and tightness, to invite the mind to release and let go of the various different compulsive, involuntary thinking, ruminating. So coming back to the breath, breathing out, deepening the sense of release. As I mentioned earlier, at this time of the day, it's perfectly normal for us to feel very drowsy and sleepy. We can, of course, do something to counteract that. We can open our eyes, look around, let in some light. Alternatively, if we do drift towards sleep, see if we can regard that also as a natural response to the situation, to the coming together of conditions. Not get upset with ourselves. Don't feel that you need to necessarily struggle and tense up against it. So just as we can drift to sleep, we can also drift back to wakefulness. And when we awake, when we are alert once again, we can always rejoin the meditation. Whenever we feel ready, we can bring to mind someone in our life, a family member, a close friend, someone you know fairly well. Could be someone that has a great capability of triggering our reactions, our reactivities. As you bring that person to mind, picture the person in your mind's eye, and then repeat this phrase, this verse on equanimity, and allow yourself to ponder on its meaning in relation to this person, or notice what might be triggered, what sort of thoughts and reactions might be triggered by doing so. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. Coming back here and now to the meditation, if you do get distracted, invite your attention to refocus on the person that you're working with, and then slowly, mindfully repeat the verse of equanimity and contemplate and see what comes forth. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your action and not merely on my wishes for you. Coming back to here and now, and then repeat the verse of equanimity. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, and not merely on my wishes for you. See if you can not regard equanimity as the same as indifference or unconcern. So see if you can say the words with a certain degree of warmth, and nonetheless with a certain degree of clarity as well. And ponder and reflect on the meaning of the verse. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. So coming back here and now, slowly, mindfully, just repeat the verse of equanimity. We are the owners of our action. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions and not merely on my wishes for you. The verse can be interpreted in many different ways. Just allow it to stir up and bring forth different thoughts, feelings, and allow yourself to consider them and contemplate on them. And see if you can find your way to a state of equanimity in relation to this other person, in relation to his or her behavior. Coming back here and now, feel free to move from one person to another as you repeat the verse of equanimity. Different person will trigger different response, different ideas due to different circumstances. Let's see if we can explore for ourselves the different implications of equanimity. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions and not merely on my wishes for you. Reflecting on the power of actions. Sometimes we can invoke compassion as we see another person repeatedly creating the causes of suffering through their actions, through their choices and actions, repeatedly creating suffering for themselves and maybe even for others. Maybe instead of reacting with aversion, we might find ourselves responding from a place of compassion. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions and not merely on my wishes for you. Coming back to the meditation, not to worry if we get distracted during such meditation or find ourselves drifting or maybe even have fallen asleep. All these are normal reactions of our body and mind to the changing conditions of our life. And as we repeat the verse of equanimity, we can contemplate also one area that is very important, how we often tend to give away our own power, our power over happiness and suffering to other people. Somehow, intentionally or unintentionally, we allow others' behavior to dictate my own happiness or my own suffering. So as we repeat the verse, see if we can consider drawing a line, discerning and differentiating the responsibility of self and responsibility of others in terms of my own happiness and unhappiness. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions and not merely on my wishes for you. Or you can say, we are the owners of our actions. Our happiness and unhappiness depend on our actions and not merely on our wishes for ourselves. So coming back here and now to the meditation, feel free to explore the practice in your own way. Now and then, simply repeat the verse, reorientate our attention, and see whether we can find equanimity in the face of changing relationship. We are the owners of our actions. Our happiness and unhappiness depend on our actions and not merely on our wishes for ourselves and for others. So I think equanimity as a concept is a bit tricky because the same word can mean different things to different people, and also in different situations, maybe we have to behave differently, even though we might be equanimous. So there is no simple, fixed way of describing or determining equanimity. And that brings me to the topic of ideas, fixated ideas, which is actually one way we deal with change. Change is quite unsettling to us. Even though some changes are positive, are welcomed, other changes are threatening and frightening, and we don't like change. In general, we don't do very well with change, because we are creatures of habits. We tend to settle back and settle down into certain routine and certain habits. And one way we fixate reality is through the use of ideas. Ideas are not living things. Ideas are abstraction based on our own experiences, of course, based on what we learn from others and our culture or society. And we have a tendency to hang on to fixated ideas because ideas not been living, they don't change by themselves. I mean, we can replace our ideas, we can refine our ideas, but we have to do it. You see, the ideas themselves don't grow and change on their own. And sometimes we get used to certain ideas and we have a tendency to hold on to them because we find them very reassuring. They convey a sense of certainty in a life that is, in actual fact, full of constant change and uncertainty. Especially this year, 2020 is like it's up and down and all sorts of uncertainties, all sorts of changes, upheaval. A lot of us find lockdown very disturbing, very distressing. We also see how people behave in the face of change, in the face of such a threat to our routine, to the way we like to do things, the way we enjoy doing things. And each one of us will react in our own particular way. Fixated ideas are a very common way human beings try to fix reality, try to somehow lock reality down by insisting on those ideas. It's true in human relationship, we project an image on that person and we demand that the person live up to that image. The image is fixed, but the human beings is an ever-changing reality. It's a changing process. And sometimes we find a lot of those changes unwelcomed, unwanted, and yet we have no choice. We have to face them. So in fact, in the face of great uncertainty, there's a great tendency for us, out of our ignorance, to work even harder to fix things, to make things definite, sure, and try to resist change. And we see that in our reactions. Our reactions are primarily reacting to change. And so, so far I have invited you to explore the power of our actions, of our choices in the face of change. Because really that's the best way to deal with change, is to decide to step back, take a good look and decide, how am I going to deal with it? What are my choices? What are the options? And how can I act in such a way to help me deal with the change? As opposed to the tendency to fall back on habituated reactions. Habitual reactions based on past experiences, past conditioning, based on our fixated ideas of the past or our projection to the future, to come back to be in touch with the reality of change and to recognize the power in our actions. By me acting or not acting in a certain way, I create the future. I embrace the change, respond to it, and create a different future for myself. So we must not foolishly give away that power. Give away the power, as I mentioned just now, to base our happiness and unhappiness on someone else's behavior. Someone else's behavior is even more uncontrollable compared to our own. I mean, we can't control everything about ourselves. We have our own habits. Our reactions can be triggered, and not entirely within our control. But still, we have a certain measure of kind of strength and power to decide. Another person's behavior is very uncontrollable. I mean, they can be thinking in different ways. They change their mind, they act this way or that, they react like this or like that. And to build our happiness and unhappiness on that is to give away that power. Likewise, we give away power to circumstances in life, demanding that life circumstances shouldn't change, should stay the way we are comfortable with, or we have built up ourselves to adapt to this particular way of life, and then we insist that it mustn't change. So that again is giving away our power. And of course, when change finally happened, not in an unexpected way, then we are in trouble because we are ill prepared, and we just roll out our usual reactions, which quite often don't help, only make things worse. We find anxiety, fear, anger escalating, and despite our best effort, we're still not getting what we want. And so it is in this kind of situation that we can appreciate how important it is to find equanimity and to take back the power we have given away, and to place that power squarely on with ourselves, to discern the changing conditions and plot out the best possible way. I mean, it's no guarantee, and how we can act and respond to the situations. Right? So this brings me to the last meditation we're going to do together, which is based on the Buddha's teaching, the wisdom of dependent origination or conditionality. Very early on, as part of his realization and enlightenment, the Buddha pointed out the fact of dependent or interdependent origination, how all the different things and happenings in the world are mutually dependent, depending on different conditions. Changing conditions bring about different experiences, changing experiences. Impermanence is a very important part of the Buddha's teaching. Impermanence and the teaching on interdependent originations or conditionality, it's all related. And out of that also comes the famous teaching of selflessness, that each one of us, doesn't mean we don't exist, but we don't exist in a fixated way. We don't exist with, which strangely enough, a lot of us we want something permanent, a core that, an essence that doesn't change. And the Buddha said that is pretty foolish, because an unchanging core is pretty useless, because it doesn't respond to change. Here we are trying to hold on to something, desperately trying to fix it, thinking that that is the best way to deal with change. And on the other hand, the Buddha is saying, no, that's not actually wise. Even though that might be our instinctive reaction, actually the better way to deal with change is to embrace change, because we ourselves are also changing. So by embracing the reality of change, by becoming sensitive and responsive to the changing conditions, we are in a better place to re-examine the changing conditions and to readjust and to come up with creative solutions, is to face the change and go with it, go with the flow. After all, we ourselves are part of that flow. It's not like we can stand apart and separate. We can't. Once you are apart, you're out of the flow. Also means that nothing you can do to influence change. To have a permanent core is not a good news, because permanent means you are out of commission, basically. That it has nothing to do with you, nothing can affect you, and likewise you cannot affect anything at all. You cannot bring about change while remain unchanged. There is no such thing in the Buddhist universe. Yeah. And if we are in touch with impermanence, in touch with conditionality, in touch with what we call emptiness in Buddhism, basically selflessness, then we are able to actively participate in it. Whereas if we are not in touch with it, then naturally we suffer. We suffer because the reality, the projected image in our mind and the reality, there's great discrepancy. The reality change, whereas the projected image in our mind stay static and unchanging. And the discrepancy, if we maintain it, is the source of great suffering for ourselves. So last meditation, we explore change and conditionality, how we ourselves, our physical body, depends on change, depends on conditions. And the way to live healthily is not to reject that change, not to deny that condition, that dependent nature of our body, is to embrace it, and to uncover for ourselves the positive aspect of change and to go for it. Of course, we can focus on the negative aspect and then withdraw or react with fear, with anxiety, react with it with aversion and anger, or we can uncover the positive aspects of it and roll with it and go with the flow and enjoy it and have a good time. Because the truth is, things are going to change, whether we like it or not. So this last meditation is a meditation on the conditional nature of our existence, starting with the conditional nature of our body, how each one of us is actually in the process of change, is the product of change, is change itself. We start our life as a single cell embryo, and now look at us. We are full of cells, full of all this other. Where do they all come from? Something must have changed. We have taken in nutrients, first from our mother's placenta, then through the milk, to food, and so on and so forth. And we built this body, which is still changing. So this is a positive change. This allows us to grow, allow us to become more capable, and do more things. We have much better control over our behavior than when we are a toddler. We have, of course, as I age, things do deteriorate, which is another aspect of change. Yeah, but to embrace this process of change, in this meditation, I will invite you to meditate on the four elements, the physical elements that make up our body, our physical existence, but emphasizing on the positive aspect. As we breathe in, just as we take in air, oxygen, imagine we breathe in the earth element, the positive aspect of earth element, which replenish us, which give us the sense of solidity. Earth, of course, is all the solid parts of our body. The muscles, the bones, the skin, the cells, the building block of the solid aspects of our body. But earth element also has the sense of strength, the strength of density, weight, weightiness, and of the kind of firmness, stability, solidity, which can be very helpful. These are the qualities we can associate with the earth element. And we can breathe it in. Each time we breathe in, we can invite the earth element to come in. You can do it in a very conscientious way, or you can allow the mind to respond by bringing forth different images or memories that's associated with this positive aspect of earth elements. And on the out breath, we practice release. Release happen in different ways. So earth elements, just as we take in the food and nutrients, we also return some to the environment, as I cut my hair, clip my nails, visit the bathroom, and eventually, of course, shed my skin cells. Of course, eventually the whole body return to the environment. So there's a great cycle of earth elements. And so out breath is release. And not only do we release, thinking of the cycle of earth element, we can also release anything negative or unhelpful, the negative aspects of related to the earth, the heaviness, the sense of being weighed down and burdened, or being stuck. All of these feelings, we can release it. So we can bring in something positive and release something negative, and we participate in the cycle of change. Same for earth. For water element, water is associated with cleansing. Water not only does water is essential to life, water is the medium in which all our chemical reactions takes place for life. Water, therefore, is a medium for change, for sustaining life. But water also replenishes us, it cleanses us, it hydrates and lubricates. There's the positive quality of water elements. And on the out breath, we release any negative association that we may have with water element. Water, of course, is highly fluid, and sometimes we find fluidity and uncertainty very disturbing. So we can release that negative association. Fire element is, of course, warmth of love, the energy of passion that drive us, and of course, good old warmth on a cool day like today. So we can breathe in the warming aspects of the fire element and release the negative aspects of it, the heat of anger that's burning us, that's literally killing us from within, as well as all the other aspects of fire element that we perceive as negative. We don't actually need to think about it. We just solve. Just breathe out and let it go. Yeah. Don't have to clearly identify each element. Of course, if images come forth and ideas come forth that are related to it, we can acknowledge that and then either take that in or breathe out and release it. And finally, it's air element. Breathing in, as the breath, in breath, we take in oxygen, sustain life, the lives of all the cells in our body, the physical life of our cells. And as we breathe out, we release the carbon dioxide, the byproduct of respiration. And so, just as we can also breathe in the positive association with air element or wind element, traditionally has to do with movements and activities. Yeah. Because wind is viewed as a source of like the flapping of the flag, so as a source of energy for movement, for mobility, and different kinds of activities. And we can breathe out and release anything, any negative connotations. And in so doing, familiarize ourselves to the conditional nature of our life, that we are dependent on these great cycles of earth, water, fire, and air, and also as a way of embracing change. That the way we respond to change is not always to resist it, to try to fix things, fixate things, to hold things constant and unchanging, and to repel change. In fact, maybe a better approach is to embrace the change and roll with it and flow with it and adapt to it, and in the process, maybe have a jolly good time. Yeah. So let's do one last meditation on meditating on the conditionality or dependent originations in terms of the four great physical elements. So I invite you to settle back in a meditation posture. So the physical posture is strongly associated with the earth element. So we start by adjusting, giving our body some time, and see whether we can allow the body to touch the earth element present in the physical support that support the posture itself. Let into our awareness how the body in this posture is resting on the surface that come across as feeling very solid, firm, and stable, that provide excellent support for the body, holding it up, keeping it balanced and safe. And see if we can, as the body adjusts itself to the posture, become reassured by it and feel okay to loosen up, to unwind, to release some of those unnecessary contraction, tightening, and bracing. and allow the weight of the body to rest more and more comfortably in the posture. So once again, we're going to use the breath as a support. Just allow the breath to breathe, to flow naturally. We don't have to control the breath in any way. Don't feel that you always need to take long, deep breaths. It's not important. The breath is just a support. Time and time again, we just come back to it. We don't feel obliged to hang on to the breath, hang on to every in-breath and out-breath. That's not necessary. As and when you notice an in-breath, notice yourself breathing in. Think of this as a movement of letting in. And we start with the earth element, exploring the earth elements of the body, the solid, hard, supportive, weighty parts of the body, but also by way of metaphor and extension to the solidity, to the structure, to the stability in our life experiences. Breathing in, imagine letting in into our system the earth element, outer earth element. We all start our life as a single cell embryo, and we have grown to our current size. Where does all those earth elements come from? We ingest them first through the placenta of our mother in the womb while we are in the womb, then through the milk that we drink, and then all the food we have consumed. Outer earth elements flow in and becomes inner earth element. Breathing in, see if we can let into our awareness the positive connotation we have with earth elements. All the sense of solidity and stability, the sense of support that keep us upright, balanced, on firm ground. An earth element can also be related to strength and power, the ability to stand up for ourselves, stand on our own 2 feet. So breathe in, let in into your awareness, images, memories, connotations. Select the positive aspects and let them flow into your awareness. Breathing out, take this opportunity to release. Not forcing anything out, we don't have to deliberately push anything away. We simply give permission as we breathe out that anything unhelpful or unnecessary, tension in the body, tightness that are quite unnecessary and just unpleasant, as well as negative association and connotation we may have with the earth element, we can let them go, allow them to just flow away with the out breath. Just like we too return inner earth element to the outer environment. When we cut our hair and clip our nails, when we visit the toilet, when we shed our skin cell, repeatedly we return some of those solid earth elements to the outer environment. Coming back to the breath, breathing in, let in of elements. Spontaneously allow different images and associations to come to mind. The positive aspects of earth elements, the sense of structure, the sense of solidity, which is a good protection, or the houses we stay in, the homes we have reside in, may convey to some of us a sense of safety, a sense of protection, which are welcomed, and we can breathe that in. Or we may recollect spontaneously images of past travel, past experiences, encountering a mountain in our past travel, or even climbing one, and marvel at its strength, at its solidity and stability in the face of changing weather conditions, in the way it confronts and holds itself in changing conditions. Might be something really positive to let into our awareness, to let back into our experience. Coming back to the breath, don't forget on the out breath, there's an opportunity to release. Breathing out, we can release any thoughts that are unrelated to the practice, any distraction. We can continue to persuade the body to unwind, to release any areas of painful tightness and tension, and any negative association we may have with earth elements. As we breathe out, we can release that as well. So feel free to linger and stay with any one element for a longer period if you like. There is no reason why each one of us has to cover all four elements in one meditation. Just stay with one or two that works best for you if that is the case. But now I'm going to move on to the water element. Breathing in and out. Likewise, first appreciate the cycle of water elements between ourselves and our environment, between our body and our environment. Breathing in, reflect on how we take in water, this fluid that's most essential to life, to the living chemistry within our body. 70% of our body is composed of water. Breathing in, we ingest water primarily to drinking. Breathing out, we release the water as we urinate, we sweat, we cry. And water element is associated with that which is moistening, nourishing, flowing, and cleansing. Probably one of the most important function of water, apart from still keeping us alive, is to cleanse the inner environment of toxics, likewise cleanse our outer body, the outside of our body, of dirt. So breathing in, reflect and welcome into your experience the positive associations with water elements, and breathing out, deepen the sense of release of anything unhelpful or unneeded. Coming back to the meditation to water elements, breathing in, invite into your awareness positive aspects that we have in past experiences with the water element. Memories may spontaneously come forth. If they are appropriate, helpful, welcome them into awareness. Past experience of soaking in an onsen, in a hot spring, and allowing the heat and the water to wash away all the tiredness or the weariness. Breathing out, release. Not to worry what we are releasing, but give permission for anything negative, unhelpful to flow away with the breath. And then moving on to fire elements. Breathing in and out, appreciate the great cycle of fire elements between our body and the environment. Breathing in, appreciate how energy, fire elements, enters into our system, become part of us, primarily through food that provide us with the energy energy to grow, to repair, to move, to act, but also energy from the sun, from fire, from heating elements. This way, fire elements flow into our system. Breathing out, reflect, appreciate the release, the return of energy to the environment. And also ponder on the associations. Breathe in the positive association with fire elements, with light, with warmth, with heat. And breathing out, release our negative association with fire elements. Coming back to the meditation, breathing in, let in the images, the positive associations we have with the fire elements. Wonderful times in front of the fire, happy times spent under the sun, in the light, in the heat and warmth. Wonderful food we have consumed, cooked over fire and heat. Breathing out, release the negative association, the fear of the bushfire, the destructive nature of fire element. Breathe out and release it. Not to deny it, but that we do not need to hold on to all those negative reactions. We don't have to fixate on them. We can welcome and embrace the changing nature of ourselves, of our environment. So breathe in the positive aspects of fire element, and breathe out and release anything negative. And lastly, we come to the air element. Breathing in, we take in fresh air, oxygen, fill up our lungs, enter our blood, transport to all parts of our body, every cell in our body, to sustain life, to promote growth, repair, regenerations, activities. Breathing out, we release the byproducts, the carbon dioxide, and let it go. Breathing in and out is the great cycle of air elements. Coming back to the breath, reflect as we breathe in the positive aspects of air elements. Air, oxygen, that enable us to liberate energy, to move, to act, to be busy, to participate in all these activities. Breathing out, release any negative association, negative aspects. Allow them to flow away with the breath. Breathing in, reflect on how wonderful it is to feel the wind on our face, to breathe in fresh air, fresh moving air. Breathing out, release the association we have with stagnant air, with the lack of movement, lack of activity. Coming back to the breath, we can bring together our reflection of the four elements of the great cycle of change. Resting with the breath, see if we can appreciate to be alive is to change, and to resist change, to not change, to be permanent, to be fixed, is to be dead, or more dead than dead. And so equanimity encourages us to embrace change and to find the best possible response to all the changes, instead of resisting change, to try to fixate, to fix, to keep things static and unchanging. So that is my presentation of equanimity. We start off with the practice of touch and release, or sense and release, coming back to the present moment, coming back to sensing, coming to be in touch with reality, to help us release ourselves from our fixated, habituated reactions to change, triggered by changes. Those fixated reactions tends to be maladaptive, a bit stuck. We are a bit stuck in those cases. So if we can release ourselves from those, then we can face change. We can come back and reaffirm the power of our actions, of our choices, that we can, through being careful and observant and responsive, we can shape the future. We can respond to whatever change that come our way. Not easy, but nonetheless, it's important to take back the power of our own actions instead of giving away that power and become dependent on another's behavior, that allowing others' behavior to dictate our happiness or unhappiness. And lastly, with the meditation on dependent origination, or the cycle of 4 elements, I hope to illustrate that to be alive is to change. We have to expect change. We may not like it, but we have to expect it. To stop changing is to be dead. And we try very hard in our life to resist change. It's very natural. It's a natural reaction we all have. But that way of fixating on things, fixating on ideas and images, fixating on, because we want things to be certain, we things to be sure and certain, doesn't work very well. So it's better to embrace the change, to make it a part of normality, is for things to change, and then to find our way to best to deal with it, to relate to it. Yeah. So that's it. That's my offering of equanimity. I hope you're equanimous towards it, and enjoy the rest of Sunday. And thank you for participating. And see you around.